Welcome to the Show Up Dad podcast, where our mission is to improve the well-being of children by increasing the proportion of children growing up with an involved, responsible, and committed father. The Show Up Dad Foundation, Inc. is a 501(c) organization that encourages dads to become more than just a paycheck. Today's guest is Timothy Arrigo. He is a father of two, husband, and mental health professional with over 10 years experience helping men and women overcome their self-destructiveness and align themselves with their true purpose. Tim is the former men's ministry director at his place church and runs a ministry called Souls for Souls. He is currently the CEO of Beyond Driven Enterprises and a father to a 5-month-old son and 4-year-old daughter. Through his own spiritual battles with vices and self-destruction, he discovered a passion to help others after giving his life to Jesus Christ. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me, bro.
Absolutely, brother. It's an honor to have you on here. And like always, tell us your story, brother.
Yeah, so my story is I'm 37. I was born on the East Coast and I came out to California when I was about 3 years old. I was raised in Southern California. Typical Southern California kid. I was a skateboarder, played music, um, was, just I was always I was the sensitive kid, man. I was the sensitive kid, but I was also just the daredevil, man. I was the risk taker. Um, I was the guy that was the extreme guy, always trying new stuff. Um, and growing up in Orange County, I was exposed to a lot of, really great music and really cool stuff with skateboarding. So I really latched onto that scene and yeah, so that was, my early life was just really full with skateboarding and playing music. Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters was my drum teacher.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was cool, man. Like I had a great childhood, man. I had a lot of great experiences in my childhood. Um, I have an older brother. He's 3 years older than me, and him and I, greatest memories, man. We used to ride our bikes down to Warehouse Music, and we used to flip through CDs and
Yeah.
look for a cool cover on a CD, go, yeah, take a risk, and then go home and play it, and it either was terrible, right, or it was great.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my greatest memories, man, with my brother going to the video store and stuff. So and then my parents got a divorce when I
Mm-hmm.
was like 13, and there was no conversation about it. My parents were going through a lot at the time, and one day my dad just walked down with some suits on his finger and no warning, no nothing. And my dad just said, I'm leaving. And I was like, wait, what? Like, when are you coming back? And he goes, not. And I'm like, wait, like what? Like, you're not coming back? And yeah, my dad ended up going and getting an apartment down the street. And my mom during the time was just really struggling, going through a lot of, I think my mom felt really guilty about the divorce, about the way it went down. And I think she carried a lot of guilt about it. And so my mom kind of was going through her own kind of midlife crisis at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother and I had already kind of been parting ways. I think you get to the age where you're like, I don't want to have my little brother around. And he was kind of in that phase.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had already started getting high. I started getting high when I was like 13,
Mm-hmm.
started smoking weed. That was kind of a part of the scene with skateboarding back in the day. It was kind of like nowadays, soccer moms drop their kids off at the skate park. But when I was growing up, it was skating was, they used to have those stickers, skateboarding is not a crime. And
Yeah.
skating wasn't, it wasn't necessarily something that people, looked fondly upon. So,
Mm-hmm.
I my parents got a divorce and I was getting in some trouble, and my parents, they sent me to a private Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up going to Catholic mass on Sundays.
Yeah.
But I never experienced, like, I experienced little moments of the Holy Spirit, I felt like, even looking back. But I remember even sitting in church and looking at Jesus on the cross and just being so confused.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand. Like, and nobody ever really took the time to like explain it to me. I did CCD and I did all this stuff at church, but I never was shown about, I was shown a lot about religion, but not a lot about a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And so yeah, man, I basically my parents got that divorce, and I went to the Catholic high school, and I just got super isolated, man. All my friends went off to public school, and I was in this private Catholic school, and I wasn't a jock, and I wasn't really into school that much, like scholastic, so I didn't achieve much academically, so I just didn't fit in, man.
Yeah.
I think that was really a year that was really a pivotal turning point for me. And after that, after the divorce and going to that school, I went to public school the next year, and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting kicked out of public school within a month. I didn't even go to class. I was just doing graffiti on the walls, and I was just anti-authority. I was just
Yeah.
mad, man. I was angry. I was angry, man. I had a lot of anger in me. And I was only angry because I was really hurt, and the anger was the only thing that gave me a sense of control in my life, like
Yeah.
I had unresolved anger. I remember one time my dad came over, and I was really high, and my dad was like, "What's going on with you?" And he was like shaking me, and he grabbed me by the shoulders. He's like, "What's going on with you, man?"
Mm-hmm.
And and I broke down crying, and I was like, "Man, everything else is messed up around here."
Mm-hmm.
I always remember that moment. And so yeah, I ended up getting kicked out of public school, and then I was in a continuation school down in San Juan Capistrano, and I went down there. It was the first school ever built in Orange County. It's right next to the San Juan Mission.
Okay.
And yeah, they basically, I don't know whose idea this was, but they took every troubled kid from every school district and they put them in
Yeah.
one school. So I'm in there with like, of course, like first day I'm getting checked in the hallway, and I'm like, okay, this is real, right? Like
Yeah.
you got to show up, and so that was where really like I just got even more masked, more walled up, more just like
Mm-hmm.
I got to show up here. I got to be tough. I got to fight. I got to, and more drugs were available, and I got hooked on speed. I got hooked on speed when I was like 16.
Wow.
Um, I had a dude that I met there, and him and I started smoking speed, and I ended up graduating the school early because I kind of cheated my way through, and I
Mm-hmm.
graduated high school like right before my 18th birthday. And within like 6 months, bro, I was full blown addicted to speed. And you know, I didn't really have a lot of supervision. I was just kind of doing my own thing, living with my mom. My mom was going to college full time,
Yeah.
God bless my mom. My mom went to college again, and like, she only had her high school diploma, and she ended up going back to college and getting her master's and becoming a teacher. So she was in the middle of all of that. So I really didn't have any good
Yeah.
role models. The guys that I looked up to in my childhood and in my formative years, they weren't like, you know, honorable men. They
Yeah.
were guys that were just into, it was kind of like the old same thing. Like these guys have money, they sell drugs, they have the cars, like they have the women. It was all external. So like I always thought like, oh, if I just had that external stuff, like, and it's all about the external, and whoever you need to step on to get what you need, do that.
Yeah.
Um, and got addicted to the meth, ended up going into a meth induced psychosis at 17 and got sent to the psych ward,
Wow.
and went into the psych ward, barely came out of that one, man. I was in the psych ward for like 2 weeks, and came out of the psych ward, went to my first treatment center, turned 18 in there, and basically counted the days, got out, and then never went back to doing meth again, but I started doing pills, and then I got a knee injury. I was skateboarding, blew my knee out skateboarding,
Mm-hmm.
and went to the doctor, man, and had to get a knee surgery and got prescribed Oxycontin. And that was the undoing, because I was basically the poster child for the opioid epidemic. This
Wow.
was early 2000s. They were heavily prescribing oxys, and I got hooked on oxys, man. And I started doctor shopping. I started going to different doctors, and my addiction just got worse and worse and worse. And then somebody told me one day, hey man, you can sell those, right? Like, and you can make twice as much, and you could just do some black tar.
Mm-hmm.
And And that's when I turned to the needle, man. And I turned to the needle, and things went dark for me, real dark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, man, my life basically consisted of living in motels with literally a needle in my neck in the bathroom mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was I had no direction, man. I had no purpose. And that was the thing that really killed me all those years, man, was like I knew I was capable of so many great things, but I didn't know how to access it.
Yeah.
It's like, what can I do? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know I can do something great, and I know God put these gifts in me, but I can't unlock them.
Mm-hmm.
That was such a frustration for me. Was like, how do I access what I have?
Mm-hmm.
And so man, I didn't really get a lot of options to go to treatment. I went to treatment once in an indigent facility up in LA. It was called Impact. Really
Yeah.
great place, man. Great people, but I just wasn't ready, and all the stuff and all the they tried to teach me, inevitably it wasn't going to stick because I wasn't hearing it. I was just walled up, man, full ego. Like, I'm not listening to nothing. I have all the answers. I know what I'm doing. um and yeah, man, I ended up going through some really bad overdoses. One time I was out in Las Vegas, and I was out in Las Vegas. I was trying to go to Colorado, and I was
Mm-hmm.
out in Las Vegas, and I was with a girl that I was with at the time, and we were in Las Vegas, and I ended up getting high, and we ended up almost getting our car stolen. We almost ended up getting carjacked. We were in a terrible area of Vegas, and we drove away kind of like in a hasty away from the scene, and we're on the freeway, and I was in the passenger seat, and she crashed the car on the freeway, and it saved my life because um, she crashed the car, and I ended up getting, she went to jail for the DUI. I went to the hospital, and I woke up in the hospital, man, and they were twisting my nipples with these clamps, trying to get the adrenaline going.
Yeah.
And I had a bad attitude. So I woke up and started cussing out the nurses, and they threw me out of there. And I was walking around the streets of Las Vegas, man, and ended up going to the dope man's place, and he dude with one eye and a guy with one leg. And I'm
Holy
literally in a
smokes.
freaking apartment building, in a Section 8 apartment, with a dude with one eye and one leg. And my family knew that I was out there on the streets. And so my family was out there looking for me, man. They were
Mm-hmm.
like taking my photo, and my mom was calling out my name. And I was like 20, 22 or 23, and my
Mm-hmm.
parents were just, my parents weren't even together at the time, but they came together. And man, I found out when I got home, I got the medical bill, and then I called and I'm like, what, 21 grand? And they're like, yeah, that's because we thought you were dead from the accident, but you were overdosed, and we had to bring you back to life. And it was just crazy stuff like that was happening in my life. And I knew God like was watching over me the whole time. And
Mm-hmm.
um, another time I went to the psych unit. I snuck drugs in with me to detox at a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I blacked out during the detox, and I got in a fight with a security guard, and they threw me in the psych unit there. And this was like an underground, this psych unit there was like, it was like hell on earth, man. This
Mm-hmm.
place was like crazy people down there, like just gnashing of teeth down there. It was crazy. And
Wow.
I got in a fight there. There was a guy that was like trying to sexually assault this girl, and while she was sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into an altercation with him, and we got in a fight. And when my parents came to visit me, they were like, what's going on here? Like, he's got marks all over his face. Like, you guys are supposed to be taking care of him. Like, and I don't know what happened after that, but they came and talked to me and let me out. But when I was there, a pastor came to visit me,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave me a card, and it had Isaiah 40:31 on there,
Mm-hmm.
right? You will rise up on wings like eagles,
He
run
goes,
and
yeah.
not grow weary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's trippy is, 12 years later, after that psych unit incident, I got called to work at a facility, And I went to the facility and I was like, oh, I know where this is at. It's right by the hospital. And I walked up on the driveway, and 50 feet away on the other side of the fence was that cage, that chain link cage that they let you
Uh-huh.
look in, where I got in that fight in that psych unit.
Wow.
And so yeah, man, like my story is just basically, it was just rock bottom after rock bottom after rock bottom after rock bottom. And
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, I even had some experiences with some demonic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had some experiences of just some dark stuff, man, dark people. Like, you know how when you're affiliating yourself with those kinds of people, it takes you to some dark places, places that most people would never even know exist, you know, when you're
Oh
just
yeah.
driving around your car every day. And then all of a sudden it's like there's a whole nother underworld
Yeah.
of darkness and evil. And you know, it came to the point where one day I got a call from my doctor. I was
Mm-hmm.
27 at the time, and he called me and he said, hey, I had gotten some routine blood work done. And he called me and said, hey, man, are you sitting down? I'm like, no, why should I be? He goes, yeah, you got hepatitis C. And I'm like, wow, okay. And I had just watched my best friend die from cirrhosis of the liver from hepatitis C.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, and then at the time they didn't have all these new medications they have now, like Harvoni, and the Gilead studies weren't done yet. So all they had was interferon.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dang, I got to do interferon. Most people don't even finish the interferon because it makes you suicidal. It makes you so emaciated.
Yep.
It just kills you, bro. And so I'm one day I'm doing these interferon injections. And at the time I was on methadone and Xanax, and I'm just eating these methadone. And I'm like, dude, how screwed up are you, bro? Like you're doing this interferon, but you're still doing the issue that caused you to have to take this drug to begin with, this interferon. And it's like, how delusional are you, man?
Yeah.
And that's when I was staring through the crack in my door,
Mm-hmm.
and I had an out of body experience for like 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I had like a white light experience. I came out of my body and I came in back into my body, and I was like, whoa, was that my life?
Mm-hmm.
I heard a voice in my head, and I believe it was the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
voice of God. And it said, this whole time you thought you were in control, but really you're just a slave.
Wow.
And it seems so cliche for some people, but
Mm-hmm.
this thought in my head, this voice in my head
Mm-hmm.
completely broke me, man. And because the whole time I thought I was in control, man. Like I thought I controlled everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately sat up on my bed and I had like a panic attack. And I'm like, man, I got to get off everything. So I walked to the hospital and I'm like, hey, can you guys detox me? And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. You know, it's going to, a couple grand or whatever. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll just pay it later. So I do fill out the paperwork and they're like, what drugs are you on? I go, oh, I'm on methadone. I'm on interferon. And they're like, oh, take the clipboard back. They're like, yeah, we don't detox anyone off methadone, number one. And number two, you're on interferon. Yeah, we highly discourage you from coming off anything while you're on interferon.
Wow.
So I basically decided to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home, and as I was walking out, a guy followed me out, and he said, hey, man, man, this was a gift from God. He said, hey, man, we can't help you, but this guy can. And he
Mm-hmm.
gave me the number to a doctor out in Riverside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got the doctor's, information, called him, went and saw him the next day, and he gave me some meds. And I went home to proceed to do this grassroots detox at my house off methadone and Xanax while I was on interferon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the craziest experience of my life.
Oh, I bet.
Within 24 hours of the detox, I was completely delirious, disoriented, throwing up, tremors. Um, and I was already so far into it within 24 hours that I literally like couldn't go back. I was like, if I take anything right, it's probably not even going to help
Yeah.
because it was so bad. I felt like there was a Doc Martin on my chest, just crushing my chest the entire time. And this went on for a week, no sleep, no food. I could barely drink water, and I was on the interferon. So I was literally every second of the day feeling like I was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I about a week into it, I was in my boxers, man, and it was like 3 a.m, and I hit my knees and I told God that he could take my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just threw up my hands and I put my head on the ground and I said, have my life. Take my life. You can have it. You can do whatever you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's yours. And immediately, man, I felt the presence of God come over me. And I believe that day my life was changed forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the day that I accepted, my salvation. And, you know, ever since then, my life has been on the other side of that detox, something snapped in me because I had realized that I had overcome something that basically everybody told me was impossible.
Yeah.
Even I thought it was impossible. I literally did not think that it was possible for me to overcome that brutal withdrawal
Mm-hmm.
all alone with just me and God in that room. And so after that, I just had a passion in me, man, because I was always, like I said, sensitive and empathic, intuitive, creative, and I
Yeah.
always cared about people, man. But sometimes like we care so much that we got to pretend like we don't care,
Yeah.
and that was kind of how I used to live my life. And it was great. Like I just immediately started using my gifts and started working in treatment. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then I broke out of that environment, started working in mental health, and just realized like so many people are struggling, man. And once
Mm-hmm.
you've overcome things in your life, um, you really realize that you can be an asset for other people. And it really
Yeah.
came from a really early on experience I had after that detox. I got my first job and I was working the graveyard shift. And there was a guy who was outside at a facility. And I walked into the facility that night and I said, I talked to the staff. I said, hey, what's up with that dude outside? And they're like, oh, that guy? F that dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, he's been out there all day. Like we tried to talk to him. He wants to leave. And I'm like, wait, okay, well, can I talk to him? They're like, Tim, come on, bro. You're wasting your energy, bro. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
let me go talk to him. So I walked outside and I talked to him. And about an hour later, he was dragging his bags past the window. And they were like, bro, what'd you say to him? I'm like, honestly, I didn't really say anything profound, bro. I just related to him. And I just told him that I understood where he's at.
Yeah.
And I came back the next day for work and he was waiting for me outside and he kind of had tears in his eyes and he's like, hey, Tim, like, I just want to say thank you for what you did last night. And if it wasn't for you, I was going to leave. And, I walked into the office that night and I was just kind of staring at the wall and I was thinking to myself, like, man, um, like that felt really good to
Yeah.
help somebody else. And the thought that followed that thought was, I want to do that again.
Yeah.
And then the thought that followed that thought was, if you want to give more, you got to be more.
I like that.
And I realized that. So my whole personal development journey has been about being more so I could give more.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, you got to be smarter. You got to be in better shape. You got to communicate better. Like you got to know yourself more. You got to walk the fine line, man. Like you got to be more because you become an asset for other people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you've overcome a lot of things in your life. You develop a unique set of skills, attributes, character virtues, insight, experience, and wisdom that you can then impart on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so really for me, man, like my whole journey in being beyond driven and the lifestyle that I live is really just all about service. It's
Yeah.
all really about like giving more, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because I found my purpose in service. I really found my purpose in um the ministries I've been a part of, the businesses that I've created that serve people. Um, I just love watching the light turn on in people, man. I
Yeah.
just it's like my new addiction, man. It's like my new drug, like
Mm-hmm.
watching people find their truth and
Mm-hmm.
find the truth. And especially in their relationship with God and not only that, but just in their marriage, being a good husband, being a good father, being a leader, like walking the fine line, because, being a rare man nowadays is rare,
Yeah.
and, I just, it's been a great journey, man. And God has been with me the whole way. And,
Mhm.
I'm blessed, like I, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at now.
Yeah. It's good to see how far you've come, Timothy. And I thank you for sharing your story. I mean, that was crazy. I know there's probably a lot more into it. You could get
Oh
more in
yeah.
depth and everything, but
Oh yeah. There's a lot more story there inside that story for sure.
yeah, definitely. But I think it's amazing how far you've come, dude, and just the steps you've taken to be better for other people. You know what I mean? I like what you said about being more so you can give more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's where the world is now. I think a lot of times people are just so narrow minded to where they just want to hold on to everything. They don't want to share anything. They don't want to share knowledge. They don't want to share help. They don't want to share anything. You know what I mean? And their world literally gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But when you give more, you receive more, right? And I think that's a universal code that everybody should live by. One of the things I wanted to ask you is all this stuff that you overcame, Tim. How did that pain when it was in your life, right? How did that really like start to shape your life to where you are at where you're at now in your relationship with God, in your relationship with your wife, in the relationship with your children? How did you use that pain to do that?
Well, I look at adversity as the greatest teacher.
Yes.
Like in James, it says, count it all joy when you go through trials of any kind, because it builds your endurance and your perseverance and your faith, and then you'll be perfect, lacking nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
I look at adversity as the greatest teacher, um, all that adversity in my life, it really shaped and molded my character, and
Mm-hmm.
it shaped and molded my heart, so I could really empathize with people and understand where they're at. I mean, I always say I'd be more afraid of who I'd be had I not gone through that stuff.
Yeah.
I live by a philosophy, that life happens for you,
Mm.
and especially, God is notorious for, working the things out that you go through, and using that design to, in the end, to totally radically transform who you are. So that pain, uh,
Mm-hmm.
your pain can be turned into purpose and personal power,
Yeah.
and I think your pain is really to be understood. Like, you got to be with your pain. You got to stop
Yes.
running from your pain, and you have to learn to just be with it and be in
Mm-hmm.
silence with it, and learn to embrace that part of you, not holding on to it and not dwelling in it and not sitting in it, but really like accepting it. I always
Mm-hmm.
tell people, you can't conquer what you don't confront.
Right.
And it's like, you have to acknowledge that it's like, okay, I'm wounded, man. And like, this is real, and even in the beginning for me, like, I learned early on that, my drug use was never the problem. It was the way that I solved problems.
Yep.
You and what was there on the other side of that was a mountain of unresolved pain.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of it was I didn't even know who I was. I didn't even know who I was, man. I was so high for so many years, I never even got a chance to even know myself. And so that pain really gave me the ability to reach people.
Mm-hmm.
And because through our own experience, it's like what's more powerful than that? It's like my
Mm-hmm.
experience. I've actually experienced that. I've lived through that. And with all my clients that I work with, it's like I've been through all that, 9 out of 10 of those experiences.
Yeah.
And going through those experiences, we it does something to the way, it allows you to have a degree of empathy that
Mm-hmm.
I think is difficult to have otherwise, and true emotional understanding of, um, you really just, you want to be in a place of, hey, like, and I understand, and I
I,
can really relate.
mm-hmm.
And I can show you a direction and some things that maybe you're not seeing, because all of us have blind spots.
Yeah.
And when you've been through that stuff and you've driven that road and you've traversed that path, you can kind of see those blind spots for people, and you can help them kind of shortcut their success.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, man, like I wonder sometimes, brother, like where would I be had I not gone through that stuff? I
Yeah.
obviously wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty crazy, like when I think about my life and um, how God has basically used my pain as a platform.
Mm.
And your pain is your pulpit.
Yep.
And you can truly bring so much value to people's lives, just based on what you've learned and what you've overcome. And that was part of my obsession. Like I was always an obsessed dude. I was always obsessed,
Mm-hmm.
whatever I was about, I was obsessed with it. And really stepping into that place of like I just want to know more, and I want to be able to help more people. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to know myself more, and I need to know like what really kept me stuck. And
Yeah.
yeah, I have a passion for wanting to reach people of any kind in any situation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now you kept saying stuck. This is the second time you said it. You said it earlier and then now. With that being said, I've heard people say the same thing, saying that they felt stuck. They knew that they had all these gifts, these talents, right? They just
yeah,
didn't know where to go with them. And a lot of times when you don't go in any direction and you're not applying action to it, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just spinning your wheels, and that's where that feeling of being stuck comes into play. You know what I mean? Because not doing something is doing something. You know what I mean? You're not going forward. So for you, I think that's pretty awesome that you're able to recognize that. You know what I mean? What do you feel was the reason you were stuck? Like, what did you find out about yourself
I
from
think
that aspect?
I think the reason that I was stuck was because
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a lot of reasons. I don't think it was just maybe one specific thing, but I think I didn't really know the solution. I didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
A lot of times I was offered very, cookie cutter approaches, kind of like the one, size fits all approach.
Yeah.
And what I wanted was I wanted to understand like my unique experience. So I think for me, what kept me stuck was I had
Mm-hmm.
I had actually like I fell in love with my pain,
Mm.
and I didn't know who I'd be without it.
So
Like
it was like your identity, right?
it was like my identity. Like, how am I gonna justify or rationalize or it was the scapegoat. It was the
Mm.
thing in my life that it was like, no matter what, it's like I'm not hurting anybody but myself, like
Mm-hmm.
the things I used to say. And I think I was just so I think I was scared of who I would really be and could I really do life. And who would I be without this hole in my heart? Who would I be?
Mm-hmm.
And would I if I wasn't so guarded and if I wasn't so walled up, would I be hurt again? Would I be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable? Like would I and I think a lot of men are just invariably they see vulnerability as a liability.
Mm-hmm.
See it as a sign of weakness. Like, oh, you get open up, you talk about your emotions, like, oh, you're weak, you're a B or whatever. And it's like, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
basically that was a lot of what I grew up with, was you don't talk about what you're feeling. You don't talk about your emotions. And I think what kept me stuck is my
Mm-hmm.
lack of emotional intelligence, like really not understanding that like, hey, you can be stoic and you can be strong and you can still be powerful, but you can
Mm-hmm.
be three-dimensional. Like you can be emotional, and it doesn't like there's healthy vulnerability and then there's unhealthy vulnerability. It's
Yeah.
like unhealthy vulnerability is I open up about my issues, but I don't really want solution, right?
Mm.
I'm just sulking in it. I'm like, validate me in my victimhood.
Yeah. Let me
And then
dump on you.
yeah, like let me emotionally dump on you, right? And then there's healthy vulnerability, like I'm opening up about what's going on with me,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing it from a place of like, brother, this is not easy for me. And like, I gotta get this off my chest though. And this is hard. This is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I'm feeling really ashamed and embarrassed. And I feel weak and I'm afraid. And it's like, there's power in that, because if I'm feeling shame about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get open with you about it, if I get vulnerable, right? Because vulnerability is the true portal to healing. I can't get better if I don't reveal what's going on with me.
Exactly.
So if I'm shameful about something
Mm-hmm.
and I open up about it with you and you give me empathy, right? The empathy that you offer me by saying, hey, man, just even as simple as, bro, I see you, like I can relate, man. Like I've been through a lot of that too. And I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all good. Like even just that, like you don't have to give me anything profound. Kind of what I did for that gentleman that night. Like it's like where there is empathy, shame struggles to exist,
Yeah.
because shame and empathy are like oil and water.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hard time existing at the same place at the same time. So I think what kept me stuck was my shame,
Mm.
fear of vulnerability, like my emotional pain that I had become so familiar with. It was like I was addicted to being addicted, right?
Wow.
Like I was addicted to like the anger and the pain and the rage and all of that was in me. And it was like, but I knew on the inside, it's like, you're not really free, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
you determine the release date of your emotional incarceration. Like you're holding the key, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
stop, you're in the cell. Like you got the key, bro. Just unlock the door, and
Mm.
but I don't want to. It's like, but I want to be free, but I like it in here.
Yeah.
It's like, this is my home. This is what I've called home for all my life. And it's like, what I don't know what life looks like for me outside of this cell. And so, you know what? I'll just push it off. And then you procrastinate,
Mm-hmm.
push it off. And you're like, oh, I'll change tomorrow. I'll do it later. And then a lot of times it's your ego, like, oh, this isn't going to work for me. Like, oh, what does this guy know? Like, what do these people know? They don't know what they're doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you already feel like you don't belong. You already feel like you're being judged. You already feel like you're not accepted. You already feel unlovable. And so you're more likely to just project that on people, like, oh, people don't really care. Like, oh, these people just want to make money. Or
Mm-hmm.
like you always have a contempt prior to investigation, a preconceived notion and idea about, especially about people that are interested in helping you. And
Yeah.
I think it takes a lot of courage to really say, hey, man, like I'm struggling, because we've all been there,
Yeah.
and we're all, I mean, we're still, that there's moments to come like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to go through that. And I think invariably as men, like, I think the generation that came before us and even the generation before them, like
Mm-hmm.
they were just locked up emotionally, man.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It was just like this big generational curse,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
father to son, from father to son.
Yeah.
Didn't help that they taught us, growing up too, that hey, big boys don't cry. You know what I mean? Rub
Yeah.
some
My
dirt on
dad,
it, you know?
yeah, my dad's a Vietnam veteran, dude. And my dad's from New York City. And my dad grew up hard, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
And so yeah, it was a lot of that for us too. Like we didn't, the men in my house, me, my brother, and my dad, we never talked about feelings. We never talked about emotion. So I just didn't even know that was something you did. Like I just thought any emotion you felt was bad.
Yeah.
Like when you feel anything, like you shouldn't feel it, just bury it, suppress it, and just avoid it and don't talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. And if anybody asks you about it, then just deny it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like play it off. And you better play it off good, because you don't want them to know. It's like
Yep.
that was a lot of the way I lived.
Oh yeah. That sounds exactly like the household I grew up. Performance household,
Yeah.
where one
Performance.
minute, one minute you're getting beat up, and then the next minute you better, wipe the blood
That was
off your
it.
nose, and
Yeah,
you
that
better
was,
go out there and fix your hair.
yep, that was it. Performance-based love, man. And that's a part of those intergenerational wounds that come through our bloodline, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
your dad grows up, let's say, with an emotionally unavailable father, and he doesn't know why his father's emotionally unavailable. Kids make everything about them. So your dad thinks that he's not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
and he thinks that he's inadequate and unlovable. And then your dad tries to go out into the world and prove that he's worthy. And so he chases success, or he chases these things. And then he has a kid, you, and his son, and you don't know why your dad does that. So invariably, you just believe the same thing your dad believed, which is, oh, I'm not good enough. I must be not that important. If he doesn't want to spend time with me or connect with me, that must be the reason. And we have these misperceptions about why people act the way they do, especially when we're young, man. And a lot of times we carry that into our adult life, and we don't want to talk about it. It's like, I don't want to blame my childhood. It's like, bro, no one's blaming your childhood. Like, it's not called excuses. It's called reasons, man. It's cause and effect. It's like, if you see a tree in your backyard that's, withering and dying, aren't you going to look at the soil? Like, aren't you going to look at the conditions? Aren't you going to look at how it was grown and maybe like something happened? Or if you have a dog, a pit bull that you get from the shelter, and if you have a barbecue with your buddies and you're out there flipping burgers and someone goes to pet your dog and the dog goes to almost bite the guy and he pulls his hand back and goes, whoa, what's up with your dog? All you would need to do is say he's a rescue, and people would automatically attribute the way the dog just reacted to the way the dog was raised or experiences that happened in the dog's life prior to, you getting the dog. And so a lot of times as human beings, like we discount what we've been through as having any effect on us. And we don't want to talk about those things. We don't want to look, especially for men, man, there's still this stigma. Like, we don't want to look weak.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that really weakness though? Because I know for me, it was really hard. So I think that's true strength that is exhibited in those moments.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, definitely takes a strong man to stand up and be like, hey, dude, I was wrong. This is what I'm dealing with. I need help. Right. And I think more men need to stand up and say that. And I'm starting to see it. That's the good thing, though, Tim, is more and more, the more people I talk to, the more people are starting to having this emotional intelligence. Right. I had a past guest, Phil Johnson, come on, and great speaker. He's like the like Jordan Peterson of emotional intelligence, right? Just super solid dude. And he talked about that we needed to change our ways. Like, men and women both needed to stop giving away their energy, right? And stop just building these walls up to protect ourselves, right? He's like, oh, dude, that's your ego. He's like, you are not your ego. And that's the main thing I took out of that, is you are not your ego. So stop letting it get the best of you. Stop letting people control you through your emotions.
Crazy thing about allowing people to control you too is it's like you're giving that power away. And what's crazy about it is, we could be standing on the street corner and a car full of people could drive by in a convertible and point in our direction and laugh. The guy next to me might have thought they were laughing at him. I might have thought they were laughing at something behind us. And, you might have thought they thought you were handsome. It's like your perception. And so a lot of times we think that people make us feel, or situations make us feel. It's like, no, your own perception does, the way that you view it. And 9 times out of 10, the reason you take it personal is because it's really antagonizing something you already believe about yourself.
Yep.
And if you don't tend to that, it's like I've always told people, someone's behavior towards you says nothing about you. It says everything about them. But why it triggers you says everything about you and nothing about them. So a lot of times we think, hey, your behavior is saying something about me. It's, you're saying that I'm it's just disrespecting me or whatever that is. And then you made me feel this way, when in reality, it's like their behavior just provoked or antagonized something that already existed within you. So is it really a trigger or is it an opportunity?
I like that.
A lot of times, like, it's an opportunity for you to work on something that maybe you need to work on.
And it's so true, because when you're talking about that, I thought back of a point in my life where I would come home from being on the road, being away, working out of state, whatever. And my wife's face, if she had this certain look on her face, like she needed to talk or whatever, right? Her face and the way she reacted dictated the way I was going to respond to her and to the kids. So now automatically I'm like, what's going on? What did I miss? Why are you so pissed off? Blah, blah, blah. And then I allowed her to change everything, you know what I mean, in me. And then being the head of household like that, we have the ability to change our environment. Okay. So when that happened, all of a sudden I'm changing our entire environment. So while I thought I was going to come home and be celebrated, now I'm just tolerated. Now the kids can't wait for me to go back on the road. You know what I mean? It's sad because now I'm like, oh man, these kids, I'm busting my butt, putting food on the table, making money, trying to buy them stuff, everything, right? And they don't even want me around. I'm better off being on the road. I'm better off just being out there and her dealing with it. And it's a vicious cycle.
And when you're not in touch with what's going on with you, like other people's emotions will make you like it will trigger you, because in order to connect with them emotionally, you have to be in connecting to yourself. Like, in order for you to be emotionally available for them, like in a lot of ways, you got to be emotionally available for yourself. Like, you got to be able to understand, what you're feeling, why you're feeling the way you are, and what to do with those feelings. And I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel feelings. And I think that's the goal. Like, get to a place where I don't ever get triggered. It's like, nah, it's not about that. It's about what you do when you're triggered. Are you taking that out on people around you, or are you tending to that? Are you meeting your own, self? Like, how do you meet yourself? A lot of people meet themselves with self-criticism. A lot of people meet themselves with a lot of lies, a lot of fabricated, lies that they tell themselves about, what they shouldn't feel or how they shouldn't feel. And I've found out a lot of guys, the problem is not what they're feeling, it's the way they're thinking about what they're feeling. It's the way they judge what they feel, and they think like, I just got to get to a place where I don't feel this way. It's like, nah, man, it's about understanding what you're feeling and the value of those emotions, because we're emotional, man. We're gonna feel emotion. It's about what do you do with that. Like, you can use that as motivation. Like, you can use that, to fuel self-destructiveness. And there can only fit so much in here, man. You know what I mean? Like, the more you bury, and you just become like your glass is all the way full, and then it just takes one drop and it just spills over in anger out to everybody around you. So it's like, you gotta be in a process where you're taking care of your mental and emotional health, like on a daily basis. And that can be so simple, man. It could just be, you exercise, a little 5 to 10 minute meditation, you get in the word, maybe you listen to a little motivational video, you connect and talk to other people, once a week, but you're in the process of, you're not allowing that reservoir to just get all full and get stagnant water there. And then it's like, you're constantly in a position of like, hey, emotional maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the things that I always tell, like the students that I mentor and stuff like that, is laugh it out. Laughter is, as they say, the best medicine. You know what I mean? Try to look at the brighter side of life. Another one too is like, a lot of times you're on the go, or you're not doing anything. You're waiting for the next best job, right? Or the next job coming up, right? So you're constantly fight or flight. And that's there's a lot of stress in that, right? So I tell them to loosen up. You know what I mean? When you're sitting in that truck waiting for the next outage or whatever like that, your bodies are naturally going to stiffen up sitting in that car, right? Or even in the desk all day. You know what I mean? So that starts taking a toll on our minds. So I tell them to get up, get moving. You know what I mean? Walk around, do jumping jacks, do some push-ups. You know what I mean? Start framing an arm out, whatever you need to do, vitamin D, read a book, start making connections, get off the darn phone and start talking to people, start living life, stop living life through your phone and start having conversations with real people. Right. And then last but not least, you know what I mean? Take time to breathe, bro. Just breathe. Right. It sounds simple, but it works, and that's some of the ways I talk to the guys about de-stressing their life.
Yeah, a lot of guys are so concerned about, their kids. And it's like, bro, you're going to an early grave at this stage. Like, look how chronically stressed you are. Like, you can turn on stress with your own mind. And it's like, if you're in the jungle searching for lunch and you come across a porcupine, you're going to spear that animal. You turn around, there's a lion behind you. Your body's going to release a lot of stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. It's going to get released by your adrenal glands into your body, your brain and body. You're going to go into fight or flight, and you're going to run away from that animal.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna, eventually come out of that state when you get away from that animal. But what if that animal is, your job? Or what about if that animal is, your negative thoughts about some event, or even yourself, or, you turn into this bitter, angry person, chronically stressed. And, at some point in time, that kind of like where I was at, that becomes your default. It becomes
Mm-hmm.
kind of your state of being, where you just kind of wake up in that state now. And it becomes kind of almost predictable, where when your body doesn't feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
you'll look for something to make you feel that way, because you're addicted to it. You're addicted because emotions are nothing more than chemicals, man. And
Yep.
you can literally get addicted you can have emotional addiction. It's like people watching the news for the new fear and the new, it's like people constantly telling the same story over and over again, or dropping everything for a potential crisis, or,
Mm-hmm.
it's like people that literally are addicted to the cortisol, the adrenaline, the stress.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, man, I think stress management is huge, especially as fathers and as men. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we have to make sure that, like, we're in a position of constantly, again, like you said, managing our stress, because how many men die every year because they don't manage their stress?
My
And
brother,
yeah,
38 years old, brother, the day before his 39th birthday, super stressed, uh, really healthy and everything, but I mean, just always stressed about his job, about pushing his crew, about his marriage, about his kids, about the farm, everything, right? Just all this stress on his life. And he succumbed to a heart attack, dude. 38 years old, bro.
and it's like, we don't, people don't believe those stories, oh, that'll
No.
never happen to me. It's at the end of the day, it's like, man, that could absolutely happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I loved about what you said is it's like these little practices. And sometimes, like, we're just so used to moving through life and not, building a daily, self-care practice.
Yeah.
And the most successful guys in the world have achieved a sense of self-discipline with their daily practice. And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, it could be the smallest little things. You put on a little 10-minute Wim Hof breathing in the morning. You're making sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours of rest. You know, you're minimizing the amount of time that, you're on your phone, like you were saying. It's the state of mind that you're in. And how do you manage that when you come home?
Mm.
Like, are you, because here's the thing, like, kids, like I said before, kids make everything about them,
Yes, they do.
right? Like, if my dad's an alcoholic and he hates his job and he hates his marriage with my mom, and he comes home from work and he's just angry, and he displaces his anger out on me, like a guy who kicks his dog who hates his job, and let's just say he takes his anger out on me, my perception of that as a young boy is that it's because of me.
Yep.
And it's like, we're responsible for we are the template. We are the template for our children. So they're going to watch through observational learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does my dad regulate? Oh, he doesn't. Or my dad regulates with Coors Light.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my dad regulates with porn. Oh, my dad regulates by yelling at my mom. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
my dad regulates, by going to the bar with his buddies. Like, oh, my dad like, how do you regulate your emotions? Because our real job is to get on one knee and look our kids in the eye and say, hey, and help them understand what they're feeling. It's like, hey, son, look at me.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling anxious. It's like, hey, I feel like that too sometimes. What you're feeling is called anxiety. And it's like, hey, that's okay. Like, come get in the truck with me and let's go for a ride really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to you about anxiety and what I do to help manage my anxiety. That changes a kid's life, man.
Yeah.
Like, and then a kid learns, like, oh wow, I just do this quick little, like, 3 breath thing that my dad taught me. Or,
Mm-hmm.
like, when I'm anxious, I'm not afraid that I'm anxious. I
Mm-hmm.
don't judge my anxiety. I just realize, hey, like, I'm just anxious. That's okay, but it's not going to stop me from playing this game. It's not going to stop me from raising my hand. It's not going to stop me from going in front of the class right now for this book report. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
they learn to not be afraid of what they're feeling. And there is a generation of men that are
Yes.
terrified of what they feel. And they're so scared of what they feel that they'll do anything and everything to numb it, run away from it, deny it, evade it, suppress it, right? And so it all starts with like, if we want to break the cycle with our kids, the best way to do that is to really develop that emotional intelligence, because that is key to, like, what kind of legacy are you going to leave, you know?
Yeah. No, man, I like what you said about getting on your knee and just talking to your son and not shaming him.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're telling him, hey, you shouldn't be feeling anxious, no, that's
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, gosh, man, look how much damage you're gonna have to put out the fire in that situation that you just created, right? When it could have just been addressed simply by saying, hey, man, I got you. I felt like that too. And explaining the why. Um, I tell fathers now, and I tell even other linemen that are out there and apprentices, you got to explain the why. You know, a lot of times when we're training people or whatever, they're going to ask why. And if you can't give them that why, they're not going to buy into it.
Right.
It's not no longer because I said so. It's like, dude, just take that little extra time and explain to them, okay, well, the reason behind this, the reason why this is happening, the reason why you need to do this. And then they'll buy into it. They'll be like, oh, okay, makes
Yep.
sense. You know what I mean? And it's
Yep.
just little things you got to just do, you know, stop being lazy, you know?
Powerful, man, because so many times it's like, you know, a lot of dads just, why are you anxious?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you shouldn't be anxious, or, you know, stop. Like, you know, you should be positive, or, you know, and then the kid's developing a relationship with his emotions as basically that there's a scary place in me that I don't have the tools or resources to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
I subconsciously believe that I can't deal with it. And so that's where drugs come into the picture. That's where other addictive and compulsive behaviors and self-destructiveness come into the picture, where those things become a solution. They become an outlet. They become a way to cope.
Mm.
And I think, you know, as I loved what you said, and I totally agree, as I think as men are waking up to this,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're realizing like, oh, okay, I can be multidimensional.
Mm.
Like I don't have to be one guy, one dimensional man who is the same at work that he is at home, that he is with his marriage, that he is. It's like, no, man, I'm multidimensional. Like I'm not going to be the same guy at work that I am at home with my kids. And that's okay. Like I don't have to be emotional with these guys on the job. Like I can, you know, I can be emotional with my family. I can be vulnerable with my wife. I
Mm-hmm.
can tell my wife, like a lot of guys' wives don't even know about their childhood trauma. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, his wife doesn't know that he was sexually abused. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they have all these intimacy issues. Wife has no idea, you know, and it's like they're having all this conflict,
Mm-hmm.
getting all triggered when they get intimate. And it's like, okay, well, the wife has no idea. And,
Mm.
and it's like so important that we know and understand, like in relationships, where we've both been,
Yep.
because it's like, oh, well, now I'm understanding what's triggering you. And I'm understanding like to be more sensitive in that area. And when you do get triggered, like I can tend to that because I know and understand why this is happening with you. And I've had so many clients where
Mm-hmm.
literally their family just is like, and a really powerful exercise I used to do with men back in the day is, I
Mm-hmm.
still do it, is um, I used to do like a threefold on a card, or I do
Mm-hmm.
it on a whiteboard. I do three columns. So the columns were what I portray, right? Who you portray yourself to be to the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is on the outside, right? Who you portray yourself to be on the outside. The middle section was what I hide. So all
Mm.
the things I hide about myself that you don't know about. And then the last section is what others see. So you would fill out the what you portray to the world and then what you hide from the world. And then everybody else fills out what they see. And it's powerful, man, because a lot of times guys would open up about something, you
Mm-hmm.
know, some type of traumatic thing that happened to them. And 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, there's another man in there who, because that man opened up, he gave another man permission.
Wow.
He gave him permission, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the man opened up, he got vulnerable, and that man sitting there watching that felt like he had permission to say, hey, man, I can relate.
Man, that was powerful, Timothy. Um, man, thank you so much for coming on, brother, and sharing with us.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
how can our audience get a hold of you? I know you're big on social media. If they can get a hold of you, reach out to you, can you please share it with our audience if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Facebook, Beyond Driven. You can follow me on Instagram, Beyond __ driven.
Mhm.
www.beyond-driven.com. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, once again, brother, thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything that you told our audience about, man, and just being so authentic with it. I appreciate that. And we'll be talking to you soon, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, my honor and privilege. Thanks again, man.
Absolutely.